much. And the other rabbis here, this is all in honor of the JLE. I'm a alumnus, someone who had the merit to learn in this base midrash in my beginning years. And that was in 1998, 99. I'm aging myself here. You see the gray hairs, they're growing as we speak. But the JLE was a place that really changed my life. And I'm honored. It's been 25 years or so, maybe a bit less, since I've come back to this place and learned Torah together with you guys. I maybe walked in a few times for Shabbos or for maybe for a schmooze with back in the day with Rabbi Kirsch or Rabbi Stepsky. That's how I'm aging myself. And I haven't been here for a while, have they? Big credit to all those individuals who taught here, special Rabbonim and all the staff who were part of my growth in the end of the 90s. What I want to discuss tonight, after just literally getting off the plane and going through passport control with my daughter, because she's not UK, so it took a bit longer. That's how it works. I've been married now 22 years, and there was JLE representatives at my wedding in Yerushalayim. But before we get to that point, I just want to catch you up what happened before I became who I am now and what the JLE did for me. And then I'll introduce who I am and how this is connected to you guys. We see on the table, it's about tshuva. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that. So thank you, Rabbi, for learning that before I came, because that's the light that we want to share, especially Erev Rosh Hashanah, Parshas Nitzavim Eilecha. It's a special time of year where you are now the 7th Shabbos of Nechomta, of comfort after the 3 weeks, which was a more sadder time of destruction and difficulty. We are now at that climax point of comfort as we prepare now for the big days ahead of Tishrei. So we have an 8th one. We already have a lot of heavenly help in everything we're doing, in our connection to ourselves, to our Creator, to our learning, to our praying. Everything we're doing now is on a different level at this time of year. It's a extra Sata Dishmaya. So we should all allow ourselves to experience it. It's not something anyone should just take for granted, that when you get to this point of the year, it's the climax of the year, especially a time of Tafshin Pei Gimel. There's been a tremendous, change in the world the last few years. I don't know if you've all felt it. I'm sure you have. Thank God, getting here, no corona issues. Thank God, hasn't come back yet. God forbid, we should not see that return, because it was smooth as anything getting through the airports in that sense. But still, there are people wearing masks. People are talking. You hear the murmurs. So it's been that in itself was a big transition time for all of us. I'm sure you all felt that way. And but to go back into the 90s, before all this technology, before the phones, I'd walk into the JLE, and there was nothing with me other than the Gemara and the Rebbe, and you can kind of really imagine that time period of what it was like to come to this place where we literally were disconnected from everything out there, and this really was the place of just pure Torah and learning. And I hope on some level, even with the technology, you're able to still accomplish that kind of level of connection. And even the Wi-Fi code, connect now. Yeah, that was cool. I was like, yeah, all right, I'm connected. I'm tuned back into the energy of the JLE, because basically, I'll tell you my personal story. I grew up in North London. Was more secular. My family were Edge Reform for some reason. I don't know how we ended up there, but then slowly now they're back in the United, and I'm here for Bar Mitzvah, which is in United. Thank God, that's changed for the good. Just gonna make a bracha. And by the way, you can ask any questions. I'm totally open. But first, let me just give a very quick intro so you can get to the questions. Growing up in London, I just did a recent talk for B'nai Akiva, and I really told a lot of fun stories about myself, which if anyone wants to listen, it's a Unity Flow podcast, which is going to be something I'm going to mention near the end, what I'm doing now. But I got into more of the description, more the social side of stuff, how I dealt with relationship challenges, which is definitely a very important hot topic for our time in history and for our generation. We are in a base religious, so we have to be respectful. So you can listen to that rather than me repeat what I spoke, and I just did that this week. And I'll get you the link. Yeah.
BA well.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, I have to say, one of the most inspirational parts of my journey, just to jump straight to Rabbi Tatz, was when I came here and the first speaker I heard was Rabbi Tatz, Rabbi Kiva Tatz, your father. Should be well. Really? Don't confuse me. No, I'm just after a flight, man. So literally, you never know with Gilgulim, you know. But I walked in here and it was packed. And he was a superstar. I don't know how it is now because it's more probably online. But in person, it was an in-person experience. It was packed all the way, everything. And that was one of the topics he spoke about: intimacy, relationships, things that you wouldn't, maybe back in the day, Rabbonim publicly would bring Makoiris, and he was bringing from his Rebbe, Rabbi Shapiro, and people who were holding it. But I was walking in with no knowledge of Torah. I went to Edgewest School. That's real rough. Yeah, if you would imagine what it was like back then when the estate was in its full, decadence, or however you want to say it. And now they've redone it. However the word is, what they do over there. But it's all nice buildings now. But back then it was rough and tough. I got beaten up a bunch of times, and I experienced, the tough side of life growing up in Edgeway in that way. It meant I didn't have much connection with Jews. I did get beaten up a bunch of times, which helped me ask the question, and this is what I went to Israel with, this is what I came into the JLE with: why am I Jewish? Why am I Jewish? What does that mean? Now, I went through the English school system, and the climax of education and history, which was my favorite subject, was the Holocaust. That was, the Great Depression and what that led to with the war. And then the last subject we studied, my last A-level course in history, was about the Holocaust. And I was thinking, well, wait a minute. I haven't heard anything about my people throughout all these, years of learning history. They didn't really come up at all, except for the worst part of our history, which is the Holocaust. I didn't hear about our great temple time of David HaMelech and Solomon. I didn't hear about our huge academies in Bavel and Eretz Yisrael, the Talmud Bavli. I didn't even know what that was, the Talmud Yerushalmi. I didn't even know. I didn't know what all the great Hasidic Rebbes, all this wealth of tradition. I had no knowledge, nothing. So I needed to now adjust myself to begin that search. And that was the question I came in here with: why am I Jewish? What does that mean to me? And thank God, when you walk into the JLE and places like this, it was filled with answers, filled with opportunities, especially when I went to Israel. And first trip I went, I ended up actually going up to Sfat during my university year. And I went right at the beginning. And it was a very, very powerful trip. I went there Rosh Hashanah. I didn't even know I was going Rosh Hashanah. That's how crazy. Imagine that. It wasn't even like in the story. I had long hair, earrings, and I wandered into a religious Rosh Hashanah in Sfat, which was perfect for me, because if I would have walked into Or Sameach at that point, it would have just been like black hatters. It would have just been too much from where I was at. So, God is a good planner, and he guided me right and took me to Sfat first, and I had an amazing experience. My brother-in-law to be, who I ended up marrying, his twin sister, was the one who was in Sfat, who I went to go visit. Yeah, you remember Rafael, and he got speak about Berkowitz and this and that, but that was later on. At that point, he was also a long-haired, more hippie, and we both met in Sfat, and that changed my life. That experience, touching base there. But then I had to get back to university, had what to do, and once in university, I had, seeds had been planted after that experience in Sfat. I'll give you just one or two stories. I mean, you want to hear a little bit of details what happened there? So Sfat, Sfat, basically one of the important things was there was a lot of soul, a lot of neshama. People like Aaron Razel, he was a young guy then. Now he's a famous Jewish artist, but then he was a young guy. His brother Yonatan Razel, if you know the Jewish music scene. I work very much in that world now. and he was just a young guy playing the guitar on the rooftops, and there was a whole scene going on up there. And my stepbrother to be was the host, and I ended up being by him. And he said to me, "What's your name?" I said, "Eliezer." That's what I remember. The Reform rabbi all those years back somehow remembered. I think that's what it is. I said, "Who is Eliezer?" He said, "Oh, he's this black guy that worked for Avram Avinu." And I was like, "Oh, sounds good. Eliezer Eved Abraham." So I'll go with that. I'll be Eliezer. And that was what everyone started calling me, Eliezer. That's an important part of my story because it gets clarified later on. Anyway, up there, one of the challenges was there was a lot of weed and stuff like that going on up there. And I had a certain experience over that time period, that year, where thank God I managed to cleanse myself of that. We can get into that if anyone's interested in it. That's up to you. You can choose that topic. Another point was Kol Isha, another challenge. That was going on up there. And that made me think, planted some seeds about that challenge. And the most important thing for me was now, Kol Isha, because it was going on. Oh, Kol Isha, sorry. Thank you. Kol Isha is when a woman sings in front of men. Yeah. So it's Kol Isha. The rabbis here can explain it more detailed halakhically and give you the more laws behind it. But basically, if I grew up in the music world, which I did, as I said, you can listen to the podcast. I used to run nightclubs and I was VIP at events. My dad just dropped me off this week. He was with my uncle and they got a stone in the road on the Music Wall of Fame or Music Lane or whatever it's called with their names on it. Harvey Goldsmith. This was this week. I got a great picture of it. It was all over the media. And, that's the world I grew up. My brothers are still in that world. And, I was working when I came to JLE, I was working up the road at the warehouse of my father. And then I'd come learn here and then go work there, come learn here and work there. I'll tell you a funny story. When I ended up in Orsamer, how I got to JLE was obviously, and Orsamer is a story in itself because let me just catch you up and I'll jump back to the warehouse story because it's funny. So I ended up basically back to university, and then after being in university, I met just the right people. I met the rabbi next to my apartment, the only rabbi miles and miles around in Brighton, Rabbi Pesach Eflin. Anyone heard of him?
Yes.
So he's literally next to my house. And I didn't stay on the campus. I was staying in an apartment that my best friend, who comes up many times in my story, he got me through his family, a nice apartment by the beach. And what was important about this experience was I had a beautiful Shabbos to go to. It was funny because there was a famous boxer standing outside, Chris Eubank, if anyone's heard of him. He was standing outside polishing his truck. I don't know what was more shiny, him or the truck. And we said to him, "Do you want to come in for Shabbos?" We invited him. That was part of the whole. Every time we saw him on Shabbos day, it's about Saturday, we'd say, "Come in," and we'd always leave a space there for him. So one time I turned around and see the spare chair that he didn't come, but I suddenly see this gorilla teddy bear there sitting there. So a few of us were having a good laugh. But the point was, we carried on with this journey, and I had an amazing experience in Brighton. I really was inspired. And I have to say that my life changed because I went from someone who was focused on, more materialistic way of life, and I suddenly started accessing a much more spiritual side to myself. And I knew the only way I could consolidate was get back to Israel. So I went for Pesach. I had time off from university, and I went for a month to Israel. Now, the problem is you can go to Israel and you can have a very spiritual experience. But if you go to the wrong place, my first intention was my friends in university who were Jewish were trying to guide me towards the club owner in Haifa and the not good thing and the not good thing. But what happened was they were too lazy and drugged off their head to even come pick me up. So the people that I did know who happened to be at the airport at the same time said, "Don't worry, stay by us tonight. We'll send you to Jerusalem. That's where you need to be." They sent me to Jerusalem the next day, ended up by the Heritage House, famous house, by, what's his name? Jeff Seidel and the other rabbi, the famous Rabbi Meir Schuster. They got me my first pair of tefillin there. I ended up seeing it months later that my dad had covered it, even though I thought they gave it to me, but somehow they got hold of him and he paid for it. So that was a merit for him. And I actually ended up getting tefillin for him later on. That's another story. But anyway, so I stayed at the Heritage. I ended up Bosamer, ended up by Aisha Torah. I was like, wow. So then where's the next page? I'm going to come back to England. Where am I going to go and bring this inspiration after a month in Israel? First time I ever put tefillin on in my life. I had my first Pesach Seder, which was kosher and Mahuda, and I had it was by Gutman Locks, if anyone's heard of him, famous guru there. It's a whole story about by. Actually, I did end up with the JLE. Must have been a bit before this trip because I must have come a few times. I think because of my brother-in-law, because when he came back from Svat, he started learning here more, and the rabbi, his name was Shashua. If anyone's remember Shashua, he was an Indian rabbi, long beard. Yeah, he used to tie it up. Anyone remembers him? Yeah. Rabbi Shashua. Ah, what a sus. Yeah, I was at many of the rabbi's classes. So Rabbi Shashua came up to me and told me a story. I literally must have just wandered in here one day, and he said to me, "If you're going to Israel, go to the guru. Go to Guru Locks. Ask for him." Yeah, he told a whole story about this guru rabbi who stopped an elephant in India, became a famous guru. He was on a rampage, a famous story, a famous person. Find him at the Kotel, tell him I sent you, and he'll. And I went for a Seder night by him. I had the most inspirational time there. I was by Osamer, I was by Esha Torah, and I needed now somewhere to bring it like on a daily level, as I said. So I was working at my father. I was coming here daily. Was davening here. We had a base midrash program back then. It was Rabbi Hill, if you remember, Avi Hill, and it was different. Rabbi Stepsky. I mean, there's obviously a new generation of staff here, but thank God we still have the real greats are still sticking it out. Thank God. So amazing inspiration I got in those days, and what it did is it put it now into learning, which is what this place and what Osamech especially is famous for. Put it into the Gemara, put it into learning. Now, because the whole idea is when you have a lot of light, I was getting a lot of light, maybe too much at that time. It's called godless Risha. When you first get inspired, it can be overwhelming. It can even be imbalancing. So the best advice that I got at that time, especially from Osman JLE, was to put it into the learning, put it into Torah, put it into a kli, a vessel, so that it doesn't just overflow and go everywhere. It has a place, and it starts focusing you on a developmental level, and you start to understand more now about all those questions I had, my tradition, who I am, what's the history of our people. Like Rebel Wine was phenomenal when I was in Osamer, hearing all his classes firsthand from him, hearing firsthand from back in the day, Reb Buhlman. Anyone remembers Reb Nachman Buhlman? He was my mashgiach. Nachman Buhlman was a fire. He used to give over the Haftorah like he was a prophet, and say it over with such poetry and it was another level with some of the Rabbonim who were around that time. Of Isby, Rav Samet, thank God should be well. I still talk to him. He's still my Rav, and he was my Masada Kedushin. So I connected in with such amazing people here and there, and it put a vessel to what I needed to accomplish in my life. Now, why did it take 20 something years for me to get around to coming back here and saying this story? So I think the reason is because everything is the divine providence. For me, that was like the most important principle that inspired me, especially when you go to Rabbi Tatshir or anything like that. You understand this concept of Hashgacha Pratis. That's the English word divine providence. Everything has a flow. It's not whatever. If you're going to learn with someone, if we're right now, who's here this moment, it's all meant to be. Who are the souls around you? Who are the souls in your family? These are deep concepts, and they're very real concepts, and they're very practical, because once you're aware of it, you can start to tune into what your personal hashgacha pratis, what your divine providence is, what your mission is, what your purpose is. So it obviously takes time. It's not an easy thing to figure out who you are, what you're here for. But that's really, the Torah is really that guiding light, because it says at the end of the Torah, things start to get very covered up. Asta Panai, we don't know what's exactly going to be happening. It's the big hest, the big covering, and a second double covering at the end of days, where we are now in 2023. We don't really know so much to explain what's going on with technology, what's going on with education, what's going on with marriage, what's going on with health. Everything's gone very intense. You agree with me? I'm not like making this up. Yeah, and that's in our lifetime, like the amount of change and the cover up where we don't have clarity, even politically, the amount of corruption on all levels. Yeah, with the way the corona was managed, a complete nightmare. So that's just one example of many. So we're in such a generation of such a cover up, and it can bring us, God forbid, anxiety and all these difficult mental issues, and we need clarity more than ever. So that's where the Torah comes, and the tshuva, and the clarity and the hashgacha pratis, divine providence, where we start to still have ability to tune in, because it says in the pasuk in the parsha lo ishkach pizaro, that the Torah will never be forgotten. That a very important cloud, that even in a very important rule, even in our time, we will not forget the Torah. People like myself, who in theory should never had a connection to Torah, suddenly through a place like the JLE and through divine providence, I was able to discover my own portion in Torah. And that ability to find your own portion, we say it in Shemona Esrei 3 times a day, and we'll say it on Shabbos. Shabbos is a time where it's even more revealed. Yeah, we're saying, we would say, yeah, come on, everyone here. Senhakeinu b'soresecha, Sabeinu mituvecha, tzmach nasheinu b'shuasecha, tzar libeinu, li'abdecha be'emes, tzar libeinu, li'abdecha be'emes. What does that mean? Purify my heart with your truth. What would I do in such a time without that? Yeah, so we have to be very grateful. One, that's the first principle of Hashgacha Pratis, to now say thank you, Hashem. We're talk about Rav Orish. You mentioned Rav Orish. We have to thank Hashem that we have a Torah, we have a Beis Midrash, we have Rabbonim, we have a JLE, we have an Osamer, we have people who are searching like yourself. This is a tremendous accomplishment of our people, that there's an awakening consistently, even more so now. Because the more crazy the world gets, the more we need the light. The more the darkness grows, the more the light can be, as the Baal Shem Tov says in this week's Parsha. I just read it out. I pray in the shul. I don't know if any of you heard of Rav Shlomo Katz. Anyone heard of Rav Shlomo Katz? So I pray in the shul, and in a frat. I just moved there recently from Yerushalayim. And my Rebbe is the Tolner Rebbe. That's where I'm at now. I'm going to catch you up where I'm at now. So the Rav Shlomo Katz is a big mashpir in the general, like Mizrahi, modern, Dati, Jewish world, and a very talented singer. His brother's Eitan Katz, and he's also very talented. They play together a lot, and he's connected to all the musicians. He recently got off a phone call with Yishai Rebo with this recent event that he just did in Manhattan, in Madison Square Gardens, and he's friends with Hanan Ben Ari, all these people. So he gave me the merit to speak in a shul this week. It's called Shirat David. It's about 500 to 1,000 families. Beautiful shul. And I spoke there about this concept, very much important and relevant right now. The idea that, we are holding at a time where we need the power of tshuva. We need the power of Erev Rosh Hashanah, this kind of awakening from the shofar, from the waking up with Selichos. There's a special time to cleanse ourselves, to prepare for what it means to have a relationship with God, to have a relationship with our Creator, with the King. Now, these are concepts that the world, you can ask me questions. I said I'm happy to discuss, but the world doesn't really, make this the priority anymore. And we, as the Jewish people, have a mission, an obligation to remind the world, and not in like some crazy religious way, in a very real, balanced, healthy way, that this is a part of our life. This affects our marriage, our business, everything. This is real life. This is not just theoretical, spiritual talk. And that was one of the important things when you meet the Rabbonim here. I'm sure they're very grounded people. They're successful people. Rabbi Audio, I've seen him on some amazing podcasts. That this is the way we're communicating nowadays. We're able to connect on all levels. That's why I mentioned I have a podcast, Unity Flow. I have a podcast, Relationship Flow, talking about how we can bring more unity. How do I accomplish more unity? Because that's a big challenge nowadays. I saw that. I don't know if any of you listen to podcasts. You listen to Tim Ferriss? Anyone here? Joe Rogan? Any of these guys? I don't know. There's a lot of big podcasters around right now, and one of the concepts is that they are very good at finding what is the question that the right now is challenging people. That's a Torah concept that the non-Jewish people have picked up on, but the idea that you should really work hard to figure out the question: what is bothering people? What is not being resolved? Where are the difficulties, and how can I, for example, in business, bring an industry to service that space that's not being taken care of at this point? So that's like a general rule in business. So, for example, unity is something which doesn't have much attention in the world generally. Like if you look at social media, it's all divisive, and I'm in the right camp, I'm in the left camp, blue, red, whatever. It's become a divisive experience. So to bring unity, The way I understood it is, one, obviously it has to be with the Torah, it has to be through prayer, but it also has to be through each of us as individuals using our creative abilities and to express that. Because music, media, art, anything creative, being a comedian, yeah, being an amazing mentalist, whatever creative avenue it is, whatever talent it is you have ability to bring people together to an experience that can take them out of that divisive state and bring them to a more unified experience. And music does that. You with me? You felt that at a show. Like I remember I was at Live Aid. My uncle put it on with Bob Geldof, and my father he did all the merchandising licensing. And I was only like a young boy, but I remember standing there and watching everyone clapping at the same time, and Freddie Mercury was saying, "We will rock you." Yeah, I was sitting in the royal box there. There was